The forest was always silent at night, and that was why he chose this place. Far from the noise of cities, far from people, far from memories he wanted to bury. The cabin was simple, built by his own hands after he walked away from the wars of men. For months, only the sound of the wind in the trees, the call of owls, and the crackle of his fire had kept him company. It was his world, his silence, his peace. But peace ended the night he heard the sound metal scraping against rock, a strange and unnatural noise that did not belong in these woods. He froze where he sat by the fire, every instinct from his soldier days coming alive in a heartbeat. That was not a bear, not a wolf, not any animal he had ever hunted. It was something else, something wrong. He grabbed the old rifle from the ad. Wallen stepped outside into the cold night. The moonlight spilled over the trees, silver on the leaves, but the shadows were thick and heavy. He moved slow, careful, his boots hardly making a sound on the damp earth. Then he heard it again, metal on stone, but this time followed by a faint cry. Not a human cry, not quite. It was higher, sharper, full of pain and fear. He felt his chest tighten. Against his better judgment, he followed the sound deeper into the forest, rifle ready, eyes searching. When he found her, he stopped breathing for a moment. She lay half hidden among the roots of an old pine, her body twisted as if she had fallen. Hard. At first glance, she looked human, but the details were wrong. Her skin was pale with a faint shimmer, her hair silver white that glowed faintly in the moonlight, and her eyes half open, unfocused, burned with a strange violet light. She clutched a weapon in her hands, long and thin, made of some dark alloy he had never seen. Blood stained her side, black and glistening, seeping into the soil. She tried to rise when she saw him, but her strength failed, and she collapsed. Back against the roots. Stay back, she hissed, her voice hoarse, yet sharp. The weapon trembled in her hand as she tried to aim at him. He did not move, just studied her with the cold caution of a man who had seen too many wars. She was no animal. She was something far more dangerous, yet her hand shook, and her eyes rolled as if the pain was dragging her under. He saw her body trembling, every breath ragged, every second closer to death. For a long moment, he thought of leaving her there. This was his forest, his cabin, his quiet life.
Whatever she was.
She would only bring trouble. But he remembered other nights, other fields of battle, where men had fallen the same way alone, bleeding, waiting for someone who never came. He could not walk away from that memory. With a low curse, he lowered his rifle and took a step closer. Her violet eyes widened with fear, but she was too weak to lift the weapon again, crouched close enough now to see the strange wounds burning along her ribs. They were not clean cuts, more like burns, edged with some kind of dark energy that seemed alive. He reached for her weapon and gently pushed it aside. "If I wanted you dead, you'd already be gone," he said quietly, his voice steady but not unkind. She blinked at him, struggling to understand when he lifted her. She was light to light for someone her size, as if her bones weighed almost. Nothing. She let out a soft cry of pain, but she did not fight. Her head fell against his shoulder, and he carried her back through the trees, every step measured, every sense on edge. He could not shake the feeling that something else was out there, watching, waiting. At the cabin, he laid her on the old wooden table, clearing it with one sweep of his arm. She stirred weakly, whispering words he could not understand, her voice breaking like static. He lit a lantern, the glow falling across her strange features. For the first time, he saw the markings along her neck and arms, thin silver lines that pulsed faintly like veins of light. She looked otherworldly, fragile, yet fierce even in her broken state. He worked fast, pulling out his old field kit from the army days. The wounds were unlike anything he had treated before, but blood was blood and pain was pain. He cleaned what he could, wrapping her side with tight bandages, ignoring her groans as he pressed down. She tried to push his hand away once, whispering again, but he shook his head. Quiet. "Save your strength," he muttered. The night dragged on as he worked. Outside, the forest had gone too quiet. No owls, no wind, only stillness. It was the kind of silence that warned of hunters. Several At times he looked at the door, half expecting it to burst open. Whatever had hurt her was still out there. Whatever had chased her into his woods had not stopped hunting. When he finally stepped back, sweat on his brow, she was still breathing but shallow. Her violet eyes fluttered open, fixing on him with a strange mix of confusion and defiance. She whispered one word, something foreign, almost musical, but then she forced herself to speak in broken English. "Not. Your cabin," she breathed, every word heavy with pain. "Ours now. They come." His jaw tightened. He looked at her, at the bandages already soaking through, at the strange weapon clutched weakly in her hand. He had wanted peace. He had wanted silence. But the forest was no longer his alone. Something had arrived that would change everything. And in that moment, with her words still hanging in the air, he knew his cabin was no longer safe, no longer only his. Something darker was moving in the woods, and he was no longer alone to face it. The fire in the cabin had burned low, filling the room with dim orange light and long shadows that seemed to crawl along the walls. He sat at the edge of the table, staring at her as she drifted in and out of consciousness. Her silver hair glimmered, faintly even in the dark, and her chest rose and fell with weak, uneven breaths. He had saved lives before, in deserts and ruined cities far away, but this felt different. She wasn't a soldier he recognized, not a friend, not even human as he knew it. Yet she had looked at him with those glowing violet eyes and claimed the cabin as ours. That word still echoed in his mind like a warning bell. He didn't get time to think long. The sound came suddenly, branches snapping in the distance. Heavy footsteps pressing through the forest, too deliberate to be any deer or wandering bear. He froze, every instinct firing at once. The silence that followed was worse. It was the silence of predators closing in, waiting, circling. He reached for his rifle, loading it with quick, practiced movements. His cabin was sturdy, but not built to withstand whatever had left those burning wounds in her flesh. The woman stirred, her eyes half opening. "They follow," she whispered, her voice barely audible. She tried to push herself up, but the pain drove her back down with a groan. Her trembling hand clutched at his sleeve. "You must run. They hunt both now." He clenched his jaw. Run. This was his forest, his ground. He had fought in worse places with less. But her words carried weight. Whoever they were, she feared them more than death. That was enough to send ice into his veins. The noise came again, closer this time. The crunch of dead leaves, the low hiss of something breathing that was not quite human. He knew then they didn't have a choice. If he stayed, the cabin would become a trap, a coffin made of wood and stone. He pulled his old pack from under the bed, shoving in ammo, matches, rope, and a flask of water in seconds. Then he turned to her. "You can't walk," he muttered. "So I'll carry you." Her violet eyes widened. "No, leave me. Not happening." His tone was hard, final. He had left enough men behind in his life. Wasn't about to add her to the list. Before she could argue, he lifted her again, feeling how light she was in his arms, as if she were made of air and glass. She tried to resist, weak fists pushing at him, but she had no strength. He pushed the door open with his shoulder and stepped into the night. The forest greeted him with silence so deep it pressed on his ears. No wind, no crickets, no rustle of branches. Only the faint glow of the moon and the thick shadows between the trees. He moved fast, his boots making no sound on the damp earth, the woman's shallow breaths warm against his neck. He didn't need her to tell him they were being followed. He could feel it. The weight of unseen eyes pressed down on him with every step. They hadn't gone far when the first shape moved. A flicker of motion to his left, sliding between the trees. He turned his head sharply, catching a glimpse of something tall and thin, its body bent at wrong angles, eyes burning like coals in the dark.
Right.
It moved too smoothly, too fast, vanishing before he could raise his rifle. The woman in his arms shuddered violently, was whispering something in her own tongue. Another noise came from ahead, a guttural growl that made his skin crawl. He ducked behind a fallen log, setting her down gently in the shadow. Her glowing eyes, fixed on him, wide with fear. "Shadow hunters," she gasped. "They will not stop. They want me alive. And me?" he asked. "They kill you slow." He cursed under his breath and checked his rifle. 5 rounds in the magazine. Not nearly. Enough. He glanced at the strange weapon still clutched weakly in her hand. "Can you use that thing?" Her fingers tightened on it, but she shook her head. "Power empty. Needs core. I dropped it." Her voice cracked with shame that left him with one choice: fight with what he had and keep moving. The shadows pressed closer, the sound of clawed feet scratching against bark, echoing in the trees. He crouched low, lifted her again, and sprinted through the forest. Branches whipped at his face, roots snagged at his boots, but he kept moving. Behind him came the sounds, hissing, growling, the sharp crack of wood as something heavy leaped. From tree to tree, he slid down a slope, dirt and leaves scattering under his boots, landing hard but still upright. The woman groaned in his arms, her body jerking with pain, but she didn't cry out. He could feel her trying to stay silent, to not give away their position. She was a fighter, even in her broken state. That gave him a grim sense of respect. At the bottom of the slope, the trees opened slightly into a clearing. The moonlight lit the ground enough for him to see a small stream cutting through the forest. He rushed to it, setting her down behind a thick boulder. Then he lifted his rifle and waited, breath steady, finger resting on the trigger. The first hunter appeared at the edge of the clearing. It was taller than a man, its body covered in dark plates that shimmered like wet stone. Its face was a nightmare, no. Mouth only a jagged opening where rows of needle-like teeth glistened. Its coal-red eyes locked on him, unblinking. Another figure emerged behind it, then another. 3 of them, moving slow, confident, like predators savoring the kill. He raised the rifle. The crack of the shot echoed like thunder in the first. Hunter's head snapped back as the round tore through its eye, collapsed in silence. The others hissed, splitting apart, moving fast. He fired again, hitting one in the chest, but it kept coming, skittering on all 4s with terrifying speed. He barely had time to chamber another round before it was on him. The impact knocked him to the ground, claws scraping across his chest. He shoved the barrel of the rifle into its face and pulled the trigger. The blast blew half its head away, showering him with dark blood. He rolled aside, gasping as the last one circled, low and quiet, its movement slower now. Cautious dot behind him, the woman's weak voice rang out. "Stream, run to water. They fear it." He didn't ask why, just grabbed her again, blood pounding in his ears, and charged toward the rushing stream. The last hunter hissed, following close. But when his boots splashed into the cold water, the creature stopped. Its burning eyes narrowed, and a sound like a low growl rumbled from its chest. It paced along the bank, but did not cross. For now, they were safe. But only for now. He sank to his knees in the stream, clutching her tightly, chest heaving. Hunters watched from the shadows, their eyes like coals, waiting, patient. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. The stream water was cold against his skin, but he barely noticed it. His heart hammered from the fight, his lungs burning with every breath. He held her close, her body shivering in his arms as if the cold had reached deep into her bones. Across the water, the hunters prowled at the edge of the clearing, their coal-red eyes glowing faintly, watching, waiting. They did not step into the stream, but their patience was terrifying. They had all the time in the world, and they knew it. The man glanced at the strange woman in his arms. Her face was pale, her lips trembling as she tried to form words. For a moment, he thought she might slip into unconsciousness again, but then her eyes opened, those strange, glowing violet eyes that seemed too alive to belong to any human. She looked at him with a mix of desperation and guilt. "They will not stop," she whispered. Her voice cracked, fragile as broken glass. "Not until they have me." He shifted, lowering her carefully onto a flat rock in the middle of the stream where the water rushed around them. "Then tell me why," he said firmly. "Tell me who you are and why those things are hunting you." Her eyes flickered as if she was weighing whether or not she could trust him. The silence between them stretched, broken only by the hiss of the water and the faint snarls from the hunters on the bank. Finally she spoke, her voice soft but steady. "My name is Solari. I am not of this world, my people. We are from beyond the stars." He stiffened, his mind reeling. He had expected many things, but not this. He stared at her, trying to read her face for any sign of a lie, but there was none. The violet glow in her eyes seemed to hold too much truth to deny. Solari continued, her words slow, her voice weak. "I was sent to seek refuge, to find a place hidden from the war. My ship crashed here, broken by pursuit. Those creatures—" She shuddered, clutching her side, as though the memory hurt more than the wound itself. "Shadow hunters. They're bred to kill, to track, to drag back what the masters want. They will follow me across worlds if they must. I escaped, but only. Barely. They were sent to bring me back alive." The man's grip on his rifle tightened. "Alive so they can do what?" Her eyes lowered, filled with shame and sorrow. "Experiment, break. Use." She swallowed hard, as if the words themselves burned. "I carry knowledge. I know things. They fear weaknesses of their armies, secrets of their power. That is why they want me. It will burn worlds to silence me." A hammer. He had fought wars, seen governments hide truths, but this was beyond anything he could imagine. Aliens, wars in the stars, monsters bred to hunt across planets, yet the look in her eyes was too raw, was too real for him to doubt. He felt a cold knot form in his gut. "You're saying if they get you," he muttered, "it's not just your life at stake." "It is many lives," she said, her voice breaking. "If they take me, entire worlds fall. If they cannot take me, they will kill you. Because now you are part of this." He stared at her, the weight of her words settling like stone. On his chest, he hadn't asked for this. He was a man who wanted peace, who had walked away from the endless noise of the world to find silence in the woods. But silence was no longer his to keep. He looked back at the shadows prowling on the banks. They weren't just beasts. They were soldiers, trackers, weapons of something greater. And he was standing between them and their prize. He turned back to Solari, his jaw tightening. "So what do we do? Keep running until they corner us? Wait here until they figure out a way across the water." Her hand shook as she reached for the strange weapon she carried, the empty device that looked like no gun he had ever seen. Held it up weakly. "If I had the core, we could fight. But it is lost in the forest, near where you found me. Without it, this is just dead metal." His mind raced. He could try to fight them off, but he'd seen enough to know his rifle would only last so long. They needed more than bullets, they needed power. "Whatever this core was, you're saying," he muttered, "that if I go back, I might find this thing and give us a chance?" Solari nodded, though fear flickered across her face. "But you must not go alone. They will sense you. They're cunning." He smirked faintly, a grim soldier's smile. "Cunning or not, I've dealt with worse. You stay here. The water seems to keep them back." Her eyes widened, panic flashing in them. "No. If they take you, there will be no one left to protect. Me, please." Her hand gripped his arm tightly, desperate. "Do not go." For a long moment, he said nothing, only looking at her, seeing the fear and the strength warring in her eyes. She was a stranger, an alien, yet he felt the pull of duty, the same feeling that had kept him alive in deserts and ruined cities. He couldn't turn away. He had already chosen when he lifted her from the cabin floor. He gently placed her hand, back down and stood. "I'll be back," he said simply. Her lips parted as if to argue, but no words came. She only stared at him with eyes full of fear and something else he couldn't name. He checked his rifle, tightened the strap of his pack, and stepped out of the stream. The hunters hissed from the shadows, red eyes following his every move. He leveled his rifle at them, daring them to try. None crossed. He vanished into the trees, the darkness swallowing him. Behind him, Solari closed her eyes and whispered in her own tongue, a prayer to stars he could not see, because she knew if he failed, they would both be lost. The forest closed in around him, thick with shadows that seemed alive. Every tree looked the same, every branch like a skeletal hand stretching to pull him back. He moved carefully, rifle raised, senses sharp. The hunters hadn't followed him into the water, but out here in the woods, he knew they were close. He could almost feel them, waiting for the right moment to strike. His boots sank slightly into the damp soil, each step muffled by the carpet of leaves. He paused, listening. The wind carried faint whispers, too soft to be natural, too deliberate to be just the forest. They were signaling each other. He wasn't just being hunted. He was being surrounded. He pressed his back against a tree, his breath controlled, his eyes scanning. He had lived through enough ambushes to know when death was circling. His old instincts, the ones he thought he had left behind when he left the army, came rushing back with brutal clarity. He wasn't lost. He wasn't helpless. It was the predator now, too. The memory of Solari's words burned in his mind. "The core is near where you found me." That meant going back toward the cabin, back to where blood stained the wooden floor and broken glass glittered. Back to where it had all begun. He moved faster, slipping through the trees, weaving a careful path. He didn't rush. He knew rushing got men killed. Instead, he used the forest itself, crouching low when the whispers grew closer, pausing when the air shifted unnaturally cold. Then he saw it. A faint glow deep in the underbrush, like a shard of moonlight caught in the dirt. His pulse quickened. He pushed through the ferns and found a small metallic device, no bigger than his palm, pulsing faint blue light. Even before he touched it, he could feel a strange energy vibrating from it. Humming faintly in his bones, he reached down to pick it up. A branch cracked. He spun, rifle snapping up, finger tight on the trigger.
Ow. Red eyes glimmered between the
Trees, one set, then two, then more. They stepped into the faint moonlight, their black skin rippling with movement, their jaws open to reveal rows of sharp, wet teeth. The hunters had found him. He fired. The shot split the silence, the recoil sharp against his shoulder. One hunter dropped, thrashing, but the others kept coming. They were fast, faster than any animal he had ever seen. They darted through the trees, weaving in and out of the shadows, making it nearly impossible to draw a bead on them. He grabbed the core, stuffing it into his pack, and moved, firing bursts to keep them back. His chest pounded as he sprinted, dodging through trees, the hunters closing in. Every second they seemed to multiply, their whispers echoing, their claws scraping bark as they leapt from trunk to trunk like demons in the dark. A claw swiped across his arm, tearing fabric and skin. He staggered, swung the rifle around, and fired point-blank into the creature's chest. It screeched, collapsing in a spray of black fluid, but another replaced it instantly. He broke into a run, his vision narrowing, his only thought to make it back to Solari before they tore him apart. He could hear them right behind him, their growls and hisses rising in a chorus of hunger. They weren't just chasing him, they were driving him, herding him like prey. Then, through the chaos, he saw the stream ahead, silver in the moonlight. Relief surged through him. If he could make it to the water, he'd have a chance. He pushed harder, ignoring the pain in his arm, the weight of his pack dragging at him. The first hunter lunged, a blur of black muscle and claws. He turned, firing, mid-stride, catching it in the chest. It fell short, tumbling into the dirt, but three more replaced it. He didn't stop. He couldn't stop. At the edge of the stream, Solari stood, her violet eyes glowing like fire, her broken weapon clutched weakly in her hands. She saw him, saw the hunters, and her lips moved in words he couldn't understand. The air around her shimmered faintly, as though reality itself bent at her will. He dove into the stream, the cold water swallowing him. Solari reached out, catching his arm, dragging him up onto the rocks. The hunters stopped at the edge, snarling, pacing like wolves denied their prey. Gasping, bleeding, he pulled the core from his pack and shoved it into her hands. This is what you needed? Her trembling fingers curled around it, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and hope. The core pulsed brighter, the weapon in her other hand humming to life with a sound that shook the air. They will not stop now, she whispered, her voice fierce, alive with sudden fire. But with this, we can fight. The hunters howled, the sound carrying through the forest like a call to war. And he knew the night was only beginning. The stream rushed behind them, its cold water masking their scent for only a moment before the hunters regrouped at the edge. Their growls grew louder, echoing through the forest, claws scratching against stone, eyes glowing like red lanterns in the dark. He raised his rifle again, breath coming in sharp bursts, but Solari stepped forward, the pulsing core clutched. In her hands, the weapon she carried, the strange alien staff, shook violently as she pushed the core into its hollow chamber. For an instant, there was silence, like the forest itself held its breath. Then the staff lit with a searing blue-white glow, bright enough to blind him. A low hum built in the air, vibrating in his bones, rising higher and sharper until it cracked. Like thunder, the hunters froze, their bodies tense, as if they too felt the shift. Then Solari raised the weapon and fired. A beam of energy exploded outward. A perfect lance of light that tore through the nearest hunter and split a tree behind it clean in half. The creature screamed once before it was reduced to ash. The others recoiled, hissing, uncertain now, their confidence shaken. For the first time, he saw Solari standing tall, no longer broken or afraid. Her thin frame seemed to carry the weight of something far greater, like a soldier returning to the battlefield. With fire in her veins, she fired again, sweeping the beam across the tree line. And 2 more hunters dropped, their bodies burning away into nothing. He pressed his shoulder against a tree. Firing burst from his rifle, covering the gaps where her weapon didn't reach. The air grew thick with smoke and the scent of scorched earth. Every shot and blast rolling through the forest like a war drum, but the hunters weren't finished. They began circling, splitting into smaller packs, darting in and out of the shadows, faster than either of them could track. One leaped from above, claws outstretched. He caught it midair with a shot to the chest, the recoil slamming into his bruised shoulder, but even as it fell, another lunged low from the ground. Solari swung her weapon sideways, a short pulse ripping it apart before it reached his leg. "They're testing us," he growled between clenched teeth, "looking for weakness." "They will find none," Solari answered, her voice sharp, almost inhuman in its certainty. But sweat glistened on her face, and he saw her trembling arms. The weapon was draining her, and fast. He pulled her behind a large boulder, both of them panting hard. The hunters circled just beyond the trees, their whispers carrying again a language of predators. He could feel that the tide was turning against them. "They won't stop, will they?" he asked, checking his last magazine. "No," she said softly, her eyes locked on the glowing weapon. "Not while I live, not while you protect me. They hunt until nothing is left." He looked at her, really looked at her. A being not from his world, scarred and battered, yet standing beside him with more courage than most soldiers he had ever known. And in that moment, he understood they were not just fighting to survive this night. They were standing at the edge of something far bigger, something that reached beyond this forest. He slammed the magazine home and pulled the bolt. "Then we hold here. Tonight we hold." The hunters screeched, the sound splitting the night, like knives against glass. Then they charged. The battle was chaos. Beams of blue light sliced through the trees, cutting down hunters by the dozen, their bodies burning into shadows. His rifle barked over and over, muzzle flash painting the dark as brass shells clattered at his feet. But still, they came faster, angrier, relentless in their hunger. One broke through, its claws raking across his chest. He fell hard, the world spinning, but before the creature could finish him, Solari drove the glowing staff straight into its body. The creature convulsed, shrieking before it turned to smoke. She pulled him up, her eyes fierce, and for a brief moment he almost forgot the pain. The ground shook suddenly. From the tree line, a roar unlike anything they had heard before split. The night. The hunters fell back, scattering, as a new figure stepped into the clearing. Larger, heavier, armored in black scales that shimmered like steel. Its eyes burned brighter than the rest, and in its clawed hands it carried a weapon far deadlier than teeth. The leader had come. Solari's glow dimmed for a moment, fear flickering in her eyes. This one does not fall easily. He tightened his grip on the rifle, blood dripping from his chest, vision swimming but steady. Then we make it fall. Together. The leader roared again, and the ground seemed to tremble under its power, and the final stand began. The clearing burned with the smell of smoke and scorched soil. The smaller hunters had fled into the shadows, leaving only the towering figure that stepped forward with deliberate, earth-shaking strides. Its eyes glowed red like molten stone, its jagged armor gleaming in the flicker of firelight. Each breath it released was a low rumble like a mountain ready to collapse. This was no ordinary predator. This was the warlord of the pack, a nightmare made flesh. The man raised his rifle, every muscle screaming with pain, his chest still bleeding from the last strike.
Ice.
The barrel shook in his grip, but his eyes did not waver. Solari stood beside him, her alien weapon glowing faintly now, the pulsing light inside it struggling to remain alive. Her face was pale, her arms trembling, but her stance was firm. She had made her choice, there would be no running. The warlord let out a roar that cracked through the forest loud enough to make the earth tremble. Then it charged. The man opened fire, bullets sparking against the beast's armor, some finding soft flesh but not enough to slow it. The creature lunged forward, swinging its massive claws. He dove aside, rolling across the dirt, his rifle skidding away. The ground shook as the claws slammed down where he had stood, shattering stone like glass. Solari screamed, raising her staff with both hands, firing a beam of energy that struck the beast in the chest. The blast lit up the night, throwing sparks across the trees. For a moment the monster staggered, smoke rising from its armor. But then it straightened, snarling, its glowing eyes locking onto her. No, the man roared, forcing himself to his feet. He sprinted forward, pain tearing through his body with every step. He reached his rifle, snatched it from the dirt, and fired again, drawing the beast's attention back to him. The warlord swung its tail, hitting him like a hammer and sending him crashing into a tree. The impact knocked the air from his lungs, black spots clouding his vision. Solari rushed to him, kneeling, her small hands pressing against his chest, her alien voice whispering something he didn't understand. Warmth spread through his body for a moment, the pain dulling his breathing. Steadier. She was healing him at a cost he could see in her fading strength. "You have to stop," he rasped, grabbing her wrist. "You'll burn out." Her dark eyes met his, fierce and unyielding. "If you fall, we both die. If we fall, my world dies. I will not stop." The warlord roared again, charging once more. The ground shook under its weight, trees snapping as it plowed through them like toys. The man staggered upright, forcing his battered body to move while Solari raised her weapon again. The final clash erupted in a storm of fire and steel. Bullets tore through the night, sparks flying as they struck armor. Solari's beam cut across the monster's side, leaving a burning wound, but the warlord pushed through, relentless. It lunged, slamming its claws into the ground, forcing them apart. The man rolled, grabbed a rock, and hurled it to draw its focus, then fired point-blank into its glowing eyes. One eye burst in a spray of black smoke, and the beast howled in rage. Solari seized the chance, thrusting her weapon forward, pouring every last drop of energy into a single blinding beam. The air cracked with thunder as the light engulfed. The warlord's chest. The blast ripped through its armor, straight into its core. The creature screamed, thrashing, its body glowing from within like molten fire. Then, with a sound like a collapsing mountain, it fell, the earth shaking as its massive frame hit the ground. For a long moment, silence ruled the clearing. Only the sound of their ragged breathing filled the night. Smoke curled from the warlord's body, its glowing eyes dimming into darkness. The man dropped to his knees, exhausted, his rifle slipping from his hands. Solari swayed, barely able to stand, her weapon shattered, the glowing core inside it gone dark. She stumbled toward him, and he caught her before she fell. "It's over," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "It's finally over." But Solari shook her head weakly, her voice a faint whisper. "No, this was only one. Others will come. They always come." His jaw tightened as he looked out at the broken tree line, at the stars beyond the smoke. He knew she was right. This fight was not the end. It was the beginning. Yet for now, in this small clearing deep in the forest, they had survived. Two strangers from different worlds, bound together by fire, blood, the will to stand against monsters. He pulled her close, steadying her as she whispered again. "I thought I would die alone." He looked down at her, a tired but determined, fire in his eyes. Not anymore. The night was far from silent, but for the first time since it began, hope stirred in the darkness.